Welcome back to the shop, guys. Sarah is on vacation this week, so I had the shop to myself. So naturally, I made something for me. It's time for a make or break. Hey guys, I'm Rob, and this week I decided to tackle something I've wanted to make for a very long time. A headphone stand for my desk. Here's how it went. This is one of those rare projects where I started out with a basic idea, but like zero plans. I knew I wanted a stand for my SteelSeries Arctic 7s, and I wanted to incorporate my wireless Anchor charger for my phone. So I grabbed both and started sketching a shape on the scrap piece of ply. Once I had my design drawn up, I brought it to the table saw to cut off the base. Now I figured I'd keep the base just a bit wider than my charging stand so I could cut out a recess for the charger to sit inside. Now, I didn't have a good plan for routing this out, so I just marked it off, grabbed my trim router, and kind of dove right in. I did intend to stay within the lines and then use a chisel to clean it up, but that plan went right out the window when the router jumped over the line. I honestly thought this was going to be a throwaway and just continued routing it out as a test. It wasn't pretty when it was done, but as it turns out, it was functional. The charging stand fit perfectly. I knew I was going to paint this whole thing black, so I figured this was an area that didn't need to be perfect, so I kept it anyways. On to the vertical support. I started by carefully cutting out my shape with my jigsaw. This went better than I expected. I went slow to keep my lines as clean as possible, and it turned out pretty good. Next came a lot of sanding. I used my sanding block to work my way to the line and spent extra time getting this piece as nice as I could. That was important because the plan was to cut another rough version, glue them together, and then use a flush trim router bit to match it to the nice copy. Once my final copy was done, I traced around it to make a second piece. I actually cut out 3 pieces, but as it turns out, 2, which adds up to 1.5 inches, is already plenty thick. I cut the piece out with the jigsaw, keeping a bit of space between the blade and the line. Next, I glued them together, clamped them really good, and left them overnight to dry. The next day, I took the clamps off, secured it to my bench, and got the flush trim bit on the router. Then I carefully used the router to match the 2 pieces. This was incredibly satisfying. Once they were matched, I spent some more time sanding to prep it for paint. It was right around this point that I realized this sort of looks like the head of an eagle. Why did I not think to make this whole thing bird themed? Anyways, I then turned my attention back to the base. I wanted to carve out space in the bottom for the charging cable to reach the charging base and cut a channel along the bottom for the cable to go all the way out the back. I sanded it a bit too, then it was time to attach the 2 pieces together. I wasn't totally sure how best to do this. I decided to put 3 3-inch screws in from the bottom. I first glued the 2 pieces together, then clamped it upside down on my jaw horse. After a bit more alignment, I pre-drilled some holes and then screwed it together. It worked perfectly. After I cleaned up the excess glue and gave it one more sanding, I grabbed some black paint and applied it liberally, being sure to go over the end grain a couple times so it could soak in. And that's it. The cable routed through the channel just perfectly, and the headphones and phone look great. This was a pretty simple project that brought me a ton of joy, and who could ask for more than that? Okay, to be honest, my only regret was that after I realized how much it looks like an eagle head, I also realized that Sarah has our great big giant bag of googly eyes at her house. I'll just have to wait till she comes back to put them on. All right, it's time to meet a maker, and this week we're headed to Pennsylvania to meet the squirreliest maker ever, Mr. John Malecki.
So my name's John Malecki. I am a YouTuber who builds basically the most ridiculous conceivable things that come to my mind. So the most unsung hero in my shop is pretty ironic. It's probably my Graco Pro 9.5 sprayer. It just gets the job done. It's a really good machine and helps us finish everything really, really fast. Doesn't get a lot of, it's not like the most prettiest and most used tool, but it's one of those ones that I would be very, very upset if I didn't have. So my all-time favorite project is probably the conference table we did with Black Rifle. It was one of the really more creative projects I was able to conceive, and they are an amazing brand to work with. So that part was a lot of fun. Going down to Texas was a lot of fun, and overall, just building a 20-foot table with a bunch of bullets in it was a blast. So a couple channels that I really enjoy that are smaller than myself. One Mr. Build It, you might got me on YouTube, but I've got you on every other platform. But no, he's a good friend, and I like to run my mouth. Bourbon Moth, Jason, he's hilarious. He's got some really, really killer content. Love watching his stuff. And then Mike Farrington, another awesome channel. If you're into woodworking and like very high level woodworking, dude is a beast, and his dad jokes, phenomenal. So right now we got a bunch of stuff in the hopper. It is late October when we record this, and we are scheduled through January. We've got everything from massive cutting board giveaways to more epoxy ridiculousness. We've got some challenges between myself and the guys in the shop, and those should be pretty fun. They'll have some cool restrictions on them. For the most part, we're working on a ton. If you want to check us out, you can head on over to YouTube and just search John Malecki, and I'll pop right up. Or at least I should pop up.
Thanks so much, John. If you guys are not already subscribed to John's channel, you're missing out on some absolutely incredible projects. Go look him up at John Malecki on YouTube. Now, before I go, I wanted to share a couple of my favorite maker vids of the week. First up, Donnie made this really cool table, which he claims is easy to make, and features a hidden wireless phone charger, which is super cool. Now, Donnie is a ton of fun to watch when he makes things, which is probably why he has over 600,000 followers on TikTok. For the last few weeks, Ben Tardif has been working on a super heavy-duty workbench, and this week he added a few upgrades, including this amazing slide-out stool, which I'm gonna try to duplicate. It would be so nice to be able to sit down when you sand. And last of all, Colin over at Woodwork Web shared this great video packed with advice for woodworking with pine. Now, if you've been watching Make or Break for any amount of time, you'll know I build a ton of stuff with pine. Colin has a lot of tips for working with this cheap, abundant, and very soft wood. Absolutely worth the watch. So last week I made these super cool shelves, which you can watch right here. I want to thank Heart for sponsoring this episode and reminding us that we can build anything we can imagine if we do it with heart. All right, break's over. Go make something.